Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Exit. Wow, I hope I can speak today. Exit Strategically, the series that helps MSP business owners plan their best exit. I'm Amy Babinchak, co-founder of Sell My MSP and a longtime MSP business owner.
And I am Ryan Buchianico, also co-founder of Sell My MSP and a longtime MSP accounting firm owner and co-creator of the Strategic Exit Assessment you've probably heard us mention before.
The reason why we're all here. Together, we're Sell My MSP, the folks that coach you through your sell and help you exit strategically because there is a process to selling your business. We've been doing this for 10 years and we're ready to share some of our secrets with you. Today, we're taking a deep dive through the marketing and sales section of the strategic exit assessment. You want to show us what that looks like, Rayanne?
I do. Okay, so once you take our assessment and you answer all of the questions, then what happens is you receive a report, and it's going to look a lot like this, and it's broken down into sections. This particular section is for the marketing and sales. These are the questions that we ask, why we ask it, and your answers to the questions and what you can do to improve those answers.
Yeah, so after you take the survey, which we'll give you guys a link for, you get a report back from us that's totally actionable and tells you what next steps you need to do. And our goal is to get you from 1 to 10 because it's a 1 to 10 scale. If your business is a 10, you're definitely going to get better offers than if it's a 1.
I
So
would agree.
yeah, so let's go over some of the questions and why we ask them and why buyers think that they're important. This is a fairly short section, so not too painful. I know people run away when they talk about marketing and sales because none of us MSP owners like to think about that because none of us are good at it.
Well, you're certainly much better at it than I am. I always say I'm an accountant, which makes me the worst salesperson in the world. Like right. But there is a whole process involved that I honestly didn't know until we started to really build these processes.
Everything's got a process, but yeah, I know the only reason that I do the marketing and sales bit is because I never figured out how to hire somebody to do it for me. And I think a lot of MSPs are in that same predicament. As owners, we're always the best salesperson anyway. The more passionate you are about your product, it's just easier for you to talk about it. And then, people see your passion, they hear your commitment to it, they're drawn to that, and then they sign up and buy your service. So, but one of the first question that we ask is, do you have a polished elevator pitch for selling your services to potential clients? And so there are two things, like in another section, we ask you about your elevator pitch so that a buyer can understand. But this one is when you're talking to a client. They're two different things. So we're going to get into that other one next time. But how long did it take you to develop your 30-second elevator pitch, Rhea?
Me?
Mhm.
Goodness. So I went through a whole iteration of it because when I first went into business, I had no idea how to even build an elevator pitch. And then joined BNI and they're like, oh, you need to do your 30-second pitch. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to say. And every week it was something different. And then somebody said, you really need to hone this message. Like, what is your company's value proposition and how can you clearly communicate that, with confidence so that the other person understands what you're talking about. And as soon as somebody explained that to me in those very simple words, I was like, oh, I get it. It needs to be the same one over and over. And so I wouldn't say that I spent quite a bit of time on it, but once I actually got it developed, maybe, I don't know, a month, 2 months of working on it and practicing it. But I'm a perfectionist. So how about you? What did,
Um, it took a long time. I'm kind of a person of few words, so um, we put one together. It was maybe 10 seconds long. It was short, and we didn't talk about technology. We just talked about the thing that we liked to do the most, and that was um, work with small business. And so we said, right, we're small business specialists in IT, and we care about your business. That was the whole pitch.
Okay.
It was like, just something to make them interested in what you do.
Well, it's really interesting though. So what does constitute a, you know, a compelling pitch? Like what are the things that should be in there? If you're talking to a brand new MSP and you're coaching them, how do you help them develop a pitch for themselves? What are the components that it needs?
What I do is I take them through their origin story. Like, why did you go into business in the first place? What made you want select this career? What do you what makes you really happy? Like, what makes you smile when you're with the client? You get that really happy, like I did something good today feeling. And we start to run those things down on paper, and then out the other end comes their tagline for the business that they should use and their elevator pitch. And then the trick
Nice.
is to get everyone in your company to use that elevator pitch. Like everyone should have it memorized.
Nice. Very cool.
Yeah, I've got a whole little presentation that I do on that. So I haven't done it in a long time. I should resurrect that one because I think it's helpful. So the next question that we ask is, do you have a documented sales process and lead follow-up for new business? 99% of MSPs, the answer is going to be no. I can just tell you that.
I didn't even know what it was, right? Like, and the concept is so simple, right? You meet somebody at a networking event and you exchange contact information. Maybe you get a business card. I don't know if people even still use business cards. You get anyway, you got his information on your phone. Then what do you do with it? Like um, what was it that made you think he was interested or she was interested in your product or service? And then what do you do with that information based on the answer to that question? Then what's the next step in the process? Like, how do you get from a business card to a sale? And what are all of the steps in between?
And I assume you have that process down now.
Now I do.
Now you
Yes.
do. Yeah. Um, Most MSPs do not have that process down. So in a 1 to 10, they're going to probably score themselves like a 2, or because they've thought about it, but they haven't done a whole lot about it yet. Um, and why is this important to a buyer though? It sort of speaks to pipeline, right? Because the next question they're going to ask is about your sales pipeline. Like, how often do you get new customers in? Like, do you have a plan for this? Like, is this a rolling thing that we as the buyer are going to be able to count on going forward? Like, you have some kind of system out there, so, every month you're getting a new client in or something like that. That was always my goal, one new client a month. And yeah, because once you get that ball rolling, it tends to keep rolling, but it's a
Mhm.
really lot of work to get it rolling. So, so yeah, having that in process is really important. But salespeople, this leads to our next question. The next question is, your sales team has quarterly goals and is knowledgeable on the company service offerings. This implies that you have a sales team. Again, most MSPs don't. It's a sales team of one. Um, but I heard the best advice I ever heard for the sales team is don't hire them until you can hire two, because
Oh,
they're
so they
different.
can compete.
They can work with each other because they're different. They're not tech people. They are not going to respond to any of the systems, processes, motivations that you already have set up in your company for everybody else. They are totally not going to respond to any of that. So you've got to have more than one so that they can kind of work together and get their own subculture going in the company.
I have seen so many MSPs just desperate to hire a salesperson, and they hire a salesperson, and then 6 months later, no sales. They Yet they were paying them uh, either a salary or giving them advances on their commissions that they end up never earning.
And they're
And
not cheap people. They're very,
they,
very expensive workers. Yeah.
right. So, you know, when I see an MSP do this, like, oh, I've just hired this new salesperson. Great. I want to see what the goals are. Like, what are the goals and how are you planning to measure the progress? Because sometimes the sales cycle can be very long depending on the size of the client. The larger the client, the longer the sales cycle. If you're going to go after couple of small businesses, 5 users, 10 users, that sales cycle is probably going to be somewhat short. But, if you're going after the corporations or the larger companies and you really want to get in there, that sales cycle is going to take a lot longer. And there should be milestones along the way so that you can continue to keep your finger on the temperature of that customer, and know exactly when it goes from warm down to cold, or over to dead, or, really hot. This is a great time to go in and, land them a pitch.
Yeah. So buyers might care about this because they're interested in all the processes that your company has, right? And this is just another one of them. So that's why you might get that question. And what is your sales process? Would describe what your salespeople do, that kind of thing. So all the stuff that Rayanne just talked about is what you would then want to come back at them with. Um, Speaking about MSPs though and mistakes that they make with salespeople, um, I find that when they hire that one salesperson, they tend to come from a sales background and not from an MSP background. And if you think about what's really successful in an MSP, it's the owner. It's the owner. The owner has that passion, but they also have that technical expertise and they understand what this business is. They're really sales engineers. And I think if you're going to go out and hire a salesperson for an MSP, that they need to be that sales engineer. They maybe need to be somebody that worked in that help desk and worked their way up, and now they're moving over to sales. Those people tend to be really successful salespeople in this industry. But I don't know why, but it's super hard for professional salespeople to get dropped into this industry. They don't seem to understand it as well as we would hope they would.
I don't I don't know either, but I would say that, you know, if you are acquiring another company or if you are looking to be acquired, it how would you do in that sales role? Like if you were to stay on with that other company, you could still go out there and meet with the clients and talk with the clients and solve their technology problems, all the while making sales for the new company or the resulting company. And you could probably be very successful in that role. And I wonder sometimes, the larger MSPs, when they acquire, they overlook that very simple step. Like, hey, instead of making this person the one to seek new companies for us to acquire, why are we not placing them in an account manager or a sales role? Because they would excel at that just like they excelled in their own business,
Mhm.
right?
Yep, for sure. All right, the fourth question that we ask is if you've documented all your marketing assets. This is just another assets in your company. So, last time we talked about all the spreadsheets that you need. Feel free to put this one in Word. Did you just shudder? I felt the shudder come through from Rianne. You need your social media, right? Your business hopefully has a social media presence, so you got to identify all those accounts and document those because they aren't going to be yours anymore. Um, Domains, right? Where's your domain registered? When does it renew? What about the certificate? Blah blah blah. Yeah, website hosting. Any advertising campaigns that you have going, right? How you're either going to want to stop those or you're going to want to turn those over in some way. Um, those are this all has to go down on a list. They're not tangible assets, but they're important assets to the business.
They really are. And you don't even recognize how many you probably have until you sit down and start to write them all out. Um, like you were saying, the SSL certificates and the domain names. I know how many domain names I have, and if MSPs out there are anything like me, they probably also have about 10 or 12, for the things that they are doing, and also like your Google AdWords, and and all of the other places. Oh, like the automatic posting, what do you call those things? Like the Hootsuite or Publers, where you're automatically sending your ads out to the various social medias. And how many social media sites are you on out there?
Yep.
How many of you?
MailChimp accounts, SendGrid account. I'm trying to think all the things that I have. You're right. It's a pretty long list, you know. And I like to put up my stuff out on all the social medias. So there's like 10 accounts for those different things that we used to just have two. We used to just have Facebook and Twitter, and now we've blown up to like 10. Everybody's scattered here and there, and you got to have an account everywhere. So yeah, so we got all those accounts. Anything that's in the company name and represents the company. Um, I don't know what you do about your personal accounts in those places. If you've been using your name as the place where that advertising goes, that might be a negotiation point with the buyer as well. I'm not sure how that would work.
I don't, I'm not certain either. You would just simply stop advertising for the company under your personal, unless of course you're still working there, and you could do that, especially if you get hired as a salesperson by
Mhm.
by any strange coincidence. But
Yeah, I always
yeah,
kept those things separate. Like, on LinkedIn, I have a company account for that, and on all the social medias, I have separate company accounts for those. So um, it tends to get intermingled on Facebook, even though separate accounts exist for that too. Um, but yeah, I've tried really hard to separate them, but it doesn't always work.
well, for the most part, I want to say that people connect with me, the human, more so than they would connect with the company. And that's where things really get muddied, because the company is sending out business messages, um, but I'm also sending out other messages that are of interest to people I'm connected with. And so I know that my connections, my personal connections, far outweigh my business connections on the socials.
Yeah, I had a customer once tell me that my Instagram page should be more professional. I'm like, this is where I post my iPhone photos. Like, I just messaged him back. I said, like, if you would like to see just the corporate things, then follow the corporation. If you're following me, you're going to get everything. You're going to get pictures of my boat and my garden and trips I take and all the stuff and my opinions, and you're going to get the whole thing. And if you don't want that, then just go follow the company and we'll just talk about IT stuff.
All
Is what
right.
it is.
So what are three things that MSP should do this month, as a takeaway from today's webinar?
Well, number one, you got to write your elevator pitch. Got to do it.
Number two, document all of those social accounts that the business has, right?
And then summarize your sales pipeline, right? Even if your sales pipeline might fizzle after you leave, you still need to document what's there so that it can be, that ball can be picked up and ran with. I know
How
I
often
had,
should they do that, do you
when
think?
I had when I sold my MSP, I had leads coming in for the next probably year, right? And then I forwarded those on to their people to follow up on and brought them up to speed on where I was with those, if I knew who they were, or if it was, a new lead coming in. And they landed a bunch of those new clients initially. So, so that worked out pretty well for them. And how long do you have to summarize that sales pipeline? Pretty regularly, because it's a moving target, you know?
Yeah, we keep our sales pipeline pretty active right inside the PSA because everything's all connected with the quotes and the opportunities, and we keep the notes and everything in one place. So if you have something like that, then your pipeline is probably already well summarized. But I just before we leave, I want to go kind of quickly go back to the sales process. And when I started to document my sales process, the whole purpose of it is because I wanted help from my office manager to follow up on the leads. And when I asked, for like, hey, we got a whole bunch of these cards at last week's, convention that we were at. Um, and here, do something with them. And she just looked at me like, what should I do? And that prompted me to sit down and, step by step. All right, first, take the information from the cards and get them into this system. Then, and then run, then send out the mailer number one. And what does mailer number one look like? And then send out mailer number two. And then what does mailer number two look like? And at what point do we start to follow up with a telephone call or whatever, right? So I started to build it out, do this, then wait a week, and then do this. Um, and so that's how I got to my sales process.
Yep. And note to self, add mind reading to the job description. Somehow that never
Yes.
works out. I don't know, those are hard to find. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. We tried hard to make sales and marketing not that boring, but it is something, there are pieces of it that you need to think about when you're getting ready to sell your MSP. We'll see you guys in a couple weeks where we're going to actually talk about the final exit strategy and the last piece of this puzzle. So we will see you all then. Thank you.
Bye. Oh, we kept it on.